So this cane I just made and recorded a whole video and thought it was going to come out cool, reduced really weird. Now, one other time this happened to me when I was backfilling and I ran out of one pack of translucent clay, broke into another pack, and it was way drier and crumblier than the one I had just been using, but I didn't have anything else, so I went with it. And as I reduced, one side was getting way longer as the other side wasn't, and half of it was reducing way faster. So I ended up with two smaller petals. In this case, I didn't see any difference during reducing. It reduced evenly, like this is the end right here. It reduced evenly here at both ends. So I don't know why these two petals, all 6 of them were the same size when I put it together. I even posted a picture on my Facebook. There's no reason, I don't know why, but it happened. So I mean, at least the two are right next to each other, so at least there's two little ones. This is just the smeared end right after I got done reducing it of what they look like. But how goofy. So I'm going to, oh, I had another way to go about this that I'm going to try, and it might be easier for people. But I'm going to play a little bit with these. So I just want to do a quick little, I have some scrap from this cane here. And I have some scrap of this part from this cane. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to lay these slices on them and lentil it and see what kind of happens. So I'm just going to roll the scrap into a ball, because this is white and translucent. It might look cool on a lentil, especially just like I said, for a backing. So I'm going to roll that one into a ball. This one also has translucent and stuff in. I think this scrap here is this back. So it has translucent, and it has, I made this quickly, so it has a little bit of this, and that was the excess I cut off. So I'm going to lay some slices on it and lentil it up, and might give me a cool polka dotty swirl effect, because I don't see myself using this fully the way it is, especially if I have a vision in my head and I want to make it, and I will find a way to make the damn thing. And I want to see what it will look like when I actually make it. So I am going to do something with these scraps. And then I'll, I could get backs out of them or something. I mean, I could like overly stretch it, but then it gets when it's baked, it gets kind of smeary looking when you stretch things with translucent, because you can actually see through it. It's so weird. I mean, I understand why it did it when I, like a year and a half ago, when I used 2 different translucents, but these translucents all felt the same backfilling. I used the same batch of white and translucent to make the petals. I really don't know what, it's like a weird phenomena. It happened. Oh well. Not gonna cry over it. Just gonna keep going and see if I can get some cool backings for when I do make the actual project and it comes out good. But the way I went about it this time, I think, is a little more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm going to try to do it another way to see if it works out easier that way. Because I want these like teardrop spotty white spots inside of a petal. And I was going to show the video, but it ended up being like 2 hours long. So for a mistaken video or a mess up, to show 2 hours of a mess up video seems kind of crazy. And I don't have enough data on my phone to edit a 2-hour video. So not that this is like the most horrible thing ever. I mean, luckily the 2 small petals are right next to each other. So, it looks more natural, but it's not what I intended. It's definitely not what I intended. Let me see down in there if it did it all the way down. Not as much over here. But it's still not perfect. I don't know, guys, why I did that. I really, really don't. It's only ever happened to me once, and I thought I had an answer for it then, but either way, I'll make it again. I mean, what? I lost a couple bucks in clay. No sense in crying over spilled milk, right? I enjoy making it. I enjoy making clay, or canes, or anything with clay, or art. It's my wind down, so it's not like I didn't enjoy the process at all. And I learned a bunch from it. And I might have a clearer way of doing it in my head to make it turn out better next time. Okay. I'm going to roll it up to get it all smooth. And then we'll swirl it up, flatten it out. And I would bake it, but I'm probably not going to bake it until I have something to put it on. But it still might look cool because that orange and red will shine through. I think it'll look cool. You know, even if you just baked it like that, it's kind of like a polka dotty thing. But I'm going to swirl it some. So just with an acrylic block, which mine is a little dirty right now. It's been sitting on my desk. Let me pick a spot. And I usually keep my pinkies flat on my table. And you just want to swirl in one direction. The bigger the swirl, the taller your cone will get. The smaller, the littler circles, the flatter this gets. I tend to go oblong because I just must put pressure on one side more than another. But I can't ever figure out what side I'm putting more pressure on. It's just what happens to me every single time. Oh, look. I swirled this the other day with yellow on this. And it's tinting that yellow. So there must be just a hair of color on this to tint that tip yellow. Isn't that weird? But when this goes translucent, it's not going to look super white. Right now, it's Cernit translucent and white. Cernit translucent looks white when it's not baked. But once it bakes clear, fairly clear. Other than Pardo, it's one of the best translucents I've found. So that orange won't really look that orange. And let's see, because it's fairly soft, it should swirl pretty quick. Yeah, that might actually look cool on its own. Let's flatten that one. You could make cabochons out of these, beads out of something like this. So don't just scrap your stuff and go, screw it, I messed up and I'm done with it. Play around with it. If you're just going to scrap it anyways, you know, those dots may look actually really neat. Crackled a little bit right there, but that's okay. So you can use this kind of stuff as backings. I love the way translucent looks. Translucent white. I am just a big fan of translucent white canes. So you can't tell me that wouldn't, once that goes clear, that won't look cool. So I'll save this for some type of backing. And then I have nowhere to put anything right now because I've been working so much lately. And I've had a couple failures. So I have a bunch of scrap clay laying around that I got to put away. Let's swirl this one too. This is a lot bigger. And there are already good videos on lentil beads. I know Teresa Salgado and Tiny Pandora just did a whole live video on her Facebook that you can still see even after the fact on lentil beads. The video I watched, I think, had captions, and it's a lady that I don't see make videos normally when I first learned, and she really taught about, like, you know, getting a block like this that has lines, putting the dot right in the center, and then trying to keep it in the center. I can't keep it in the center, and I honestly don't even care if it stays in the center, truly, as long as it's swirling. This one I'm going to swirl a little less. I still think that looks cool. Honestly, I might even bake one of these just to bake it. Or cut a piece out of it. You know, like a necklace or a pendant. And we even layered the translucent. I kept them layered, so some will look like they're in front, some will look behind, some of it will look 3D because I'm smearing it right now. And now that it's going a little more see-through, you can actually see, because I have plenty more to do this for another backing, but if I like this, I might actually just turn this into something right now. Kind of like this side better, but it's so delicate when it's all white. When it's completely white, they're so delicate looking, you know, with that haze of the translucent. Let me get a cutter out. Let's see, we can find something cool. Maybe in like a football shaped cutter might look cool with this, so we can get the swirl right in the middle. Or my oval cutters that I have. Like a symmetrical cutter might look cool. So, because I can get that swirl right in the center. There's my footballs. I have a couple, and then I have these. So let's see. So I have an oval that I could do something like that. Or I have a football, which actually I haven't been using my football shape much, I have to say, so I might do a football shape. Something like that. Or I have this kind of, it's oval, but it's not as oval as my other one. And the metal ones, I have no clue where I got. Most of my cutters I get from the Metal Clay Studio on Etsy. Most of them. I do have a few from Ojoy Creations as well. Mary Joy Coleman from Ojoy Creations. I think I'm going to do a football shape just because I haven't made one in a while. And my tile just came out of the oven, so it's a little warm. And really, honestly, it doesn't really matter what side I cut right now because they're both going to be about the same. The center is about in the same spot on each one. So just pick a spot you like. And because I don't bake on paper, it is going to get a glossy back, but I don't like baking on paper. I never usually have a bunch of scrap paper around anyways, so, I mean, I can use parchment, which I do have, or scrap paper, but honestly, I think it's a waste of paper when I'm just going to sand it and stuff. I mean, but you could put the swirl off to the side. I mean, it does not need to be in the center. I think I'm going to, but you could totally swirl it like that. That actually looks neat too. Decisions. I kind of want to put it on the side because I got more of those polka dotty looks. Like this. Just decide, Kitty. Let's just do it. Just go for it. And then I'll bake this. And we might get a, cool piece out of this too. So don't, never really just give up on your pieces. Yes, the side's going to be more orange. It's pretty thick too. So you could wrap it. I'll probably just leave it because it's smeared down the side. I think it kind of looks cool, especially when this bakes. It's gonna be more orange than this white. But don't just give up on your things. Try to do something else with them. You don't know until you try. And if I was just gonna mush all of this together and go, screw it, I messed up, I might as well try something else with it. So I'm gonna bake this and see what it looks like, and then we could use that as a backing, something like that. Obviously a little thinner than this, but something like that. So here is the one we made, And it's Sunday, so this has been a couple days with my scrap. And I'm going to remake this flower cane soon. And I'll probably actually show this video after the cane. That way you have the same scraps or similar scraps. And then I made these two with a different color base of scraps and lentiled them up. And all we have to do is just sand, buff, and resin. Now, because they're fairly smooth to begin with, there's not much going on. I'm not going to do a full big sand. Usually I would start, if it's really rough, 300. Oh, sorry, that's 3,000. 350 or 320. 320 I have, if it's really rough. But I don't usually start there. Most of the time it's at a 400. And then I do 600, 800, 1,000, 1,500. But because these are fairly smooth, I don't want to have to do a whole bunch of sanding. So I might start at 800. Just because, just to get a little sheen on it. And do like 1,000 maybe. And I'm going to use my skill sander. You could sand totally by hand. Just picture this is, you know, regular sandpaper. You would just sand by hand. I have a bowl of water here. This is my sanding bowl. And it had dried up, so some of the dust got stuck in there. But anyways, so I do this wet. And both of the sandpapers and the skill sander are in my Amazon Ambassador store, which is in the link below every video since November. And, in my Facebook page in the announcements tab. So I use the skill sander, and if you want to get higher grits of sandpaper, I had to, for the 600 grit, this pack didn't come with a 600 grit, so I had to buy round ones. So I have round ones. This is a 600 grit one, and then I have even higher ones that are like 3,000, 4,000. If you're not going to resin and you want even a higher sheen. I just got round ones because I couldn't find the triangle, and they work just as fine. And most of those are on my Amazon as well. So this just makes it way faster. You can use this wet, but unlike sandpaper, you're not going to dunk this whole thing in water, obviously. You're just going to wet your pendant, you know, and these will last as long as you don't oversaturate them with water, just enough to keep the dust down. These will last. You know, say I'm going to do individual pendants this size, I could probably do 12, 15 pendants or more without changing this. But if I'm doing a bowl or something, you know, I'll have to maybe one bowl or two bowls. I don't know. It just depends on what you're doing and how dull you want it or how rough you want it. So anyways, this gets a little, it's not super loud, but a little loud. And all you do is just turn it on. Now, my pendant's wet, so that's wet enough for me. I mean, I got a little bit on here for my fingers, but I didn't mean to. But anyways, turn it on. I just dipped a little more water on there with my fingers. And, you know, people ask all the time, how do you know when you're done sanding? Feel with your fingers. Feel it before you start, feel it after you start. Feel smoother and you're happy with it, then move on. If I need to add water, I see it's starting to cake up, I'll just take a little bit on my finger and do that. So the front side's done. That's all I needed on the front. that's all I'll do for my 800. And again, they're fairly smooth, and I'm not looking to get a high shine on these, or a smooth, because I'm going to be resining them. And they're already really smooth. I don't have a bunch of fingerprints on them. So I don't need to do much with these. So I'm going to do the 1000 next. I have a little black dot in there, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get it out. Not that you can see it from that distance, but... This is so much easier on your hands. You can also do the edges if you want, but I'll just do them with my Dremel. So some people use, I know on Day or Taliana, she uses a pedicure sander, like a foot sander thing. Now I have one of those, but it didn't have enough torque for me for what I was looking for. I literally would sit here all day. It took me forever. And so then I was looking for something with a little more torque, and that's where I got that. So that works way better for me and is faster. And is not, I mean, that thing's like 40 bucks. I think it's like 35 or 40 for the skill sander. And it comes with some sandpaper, but not as fine as we like for polymer clay. So probably a total of like 50 or something for the sandpapers that you want. And then the sander. I mean, that's not too bad for how much it's going to save your hands. Especially if you don't resin and you're looking to get a high shine by hand. I used to hate the sanding part. Now I really just don't mind it. Okay, so that's it for sanding. And they're fairly smooth. Again, if I was looking to get a really high shine, I could go up higher grits. But that should be fine for what I'm doing. It's nice and smooth. You know, there's no big blemishes. There might be, but once we buff up, I might be able to see some indents. But again, resin hides a lot. Now, to get these edges smooth, I just tend to use my Dremel. And now with plastic cutters, you're never going to get a smooth edge. Let me make sure my Dremel's on. No, I need to plug it in. With plastic cutters, you're never going to get a high, nice cut edge. But you're also not going to get that lip like you would from a metal cutter. So, don't worry. I don't worry about smoothing that off when I cut my raw clay, because I don't want to distort my shape. I just smooth it off with my Dremel. And it doesn't take very long. Where's my orange attachment? I haven't done any of this in so long. I gotta find my orange attachment. Hang on. Oh, I found it. Hang on 2 seconds. Okay, so I use this orange and white wheels, as you guys know. Again, they're in my Amazon store. I've showed these a million times at the end of my pendant tutorials. If you don't watch till the end, you're not going to see my finishing part. People ask me all the time, how did you get that so shiny or this and that? And most of the time I show it. You just have to watch until the part of the video that I would do it, which is after I make the clay, after I bake it, at the end when you would normally sand and buff is when I will normally show sanding and buffing. So I use a Dremel 4000. I did have a refurbished one from Amazon that lasted about 4 years, but this is my new one because that one died. And what I like about the 4000, one, the lock button is not up here, so I can hold it up here without hitting the lock button and it going and grinding to a stop. Two, it's variable speed, not just a high-low, because on the high-low, the low is too low and the high is way too high. So I like this one. And off brands really just don't have it. They really don't have the torque you need. So anyways, I mean, if you have an off brand, great. But I found I had an off brand that I used while I was ordering my new Dremel, and it just did not have the torque I wanted. I would sit there forever to get the same shine I would have gotten in a few seconds. So to put your bit in, again, you hold your lock button and then you can loosen this or tighten this. Put your bit in and really check it to make sure it's in. Turn it on and then get it to a comfortable speed for you. I don't usually go past 15, but I also don't usually go at a 5 either. I'm usually somewhere in between at a 10 and 15. I'm going to move you over my lap just so you can see. I have a flexi shaft, but I tend not to. Yes, I have shorts on. I tend not to use it because it's one extra big cord in my pile of cords down there. So when I'm doing the sides, I'm just going to choke up like this and pull towards myself to get this jaggedy side off, okay? Pull towards and then pull towards. So let's do that. So I'm at 15 right now. And the orange wheel, if you put a little pressure, is coarse enough to trim these sides. See that? See how that's gone now? That's why I like both the orange wheel and the white wheel. I find I get a better shine than just with one because it's slightly coarser. I'm just going to up myself a little bit. Nah, maybe not, because I'm going to buff the top. You don't want to be going too fast, because if you push too hard or have it on too high of a speed, you're not going to be buffing. You're going to actually be trimming. So when you're buffing, you're holding it. You're not laying it on here as hard as you can. You're just gently gliding over it and buffing the surface of it. So again, very gently, going around. Can you already see the shine I'm getting in those areas? And I only did an 800 and 1000 sandpaper as well. The higher you would have gone, the shinier this would be. And then some people will also say to me, why do you sand and buff if you're just going to resin? I find if it looks better before the resin, it's going to look better after the resin. Resin is like a magnifying glass. And I feel like it will hide little things, but it will also accentuate things. So if you're going to take the time to do it, I find just do it. It doesn't take very long, and enjoy the process. If you hate this part, well then don't do it, but that's your call. I just find it looks better, personally. And this really doesn't take that long. I'm not going to show you all of them, but I'll show you this one. And I would do this to the back as well. I'm not going to resin the back. You can resin front and back, but I'm not going to. But I definitely always will buff it up. 90% of the time I'll sand and buff it quickly. My pendants don't ever tend to turn around on me and flip, so you're seeing the back. That actually really has never happened to me. I've never been walking around with the back of my pendant showing. In the 2 years I've been making pendants for myself. Or someone else. I've never seen them walk around with it. That's probably good enough. And then again, hold your lock button down, untwist, put your white wheel in, And then do the same thing. I might up it a little bit, just because it's taking a while. And again, with very little pressure, just buff it up. And some clays buff way better than other clays, you know? Like Kato gets a really beautiful shine on it, but it's really hard to work with, especially in the winter around here. In Vermont, at least. I could only use Kato for maybe 2 or 3 months out of the year when it's warm enough. But if you're in a warm climate, Kato might be good for you because it's a really stiff clay. Like I know some people in Australia use it in the summer. Can you see that shine we're getting? And obviously if you're not on camera, take way more time if you want to even get it perfectly even and shiny. I really want to remake that flower, but I have to go to Hannaford's and because it's Sunday and get ready for the week. Now again, I'll do the sides a little bit. I don't really care if they're super shiny. And then I'll also do the back, but I'll do it off camera on the rest of these, and then I'll show you when they're done. And then I'll also show you resining on this video. I have 2 resining videos, but I'll actually show you how I do it on this video because it's a short video. Okay, so that's enough to be under resin to look good. So yeah, I'm going to do the back, and I'm going to do the other 2, same way with the orange and the white wheel. Also trim these edges. When those are done, we'll resin them up. Okay, so I have them all sanded and buffed, and now we're going to resin them. Now, I do have 2 resining videos, an older one and then an updated one, so check those out if you have more questions about UV resin and what I use and why. So I think I'm going to only pick 2, obviously this red one and one of these 2, because I don't need 2 of the same. So I'll probably do this little one and then this one here and save this one in my save box. Now I do want to tell you what I'm doing. So I have this big red mat and it's on my Amazon Ambassador, and I just cut little pieces and then just a piece of foam, really that's all this is, just to rest it on, but you could rest it on a tile or whatever you have, a piece of cardboard or something sturdy because this is flimsy. So some people will say you should do it on this side. My problem is with doing it on this side is that if you get a spill, right, it's going to follow, and you can see where it has before, it's going to follow this line. So on the back of your pendant, you're going to have this square pattern. Whereas if you get a spill on this, it should just run down and then run down the cone. So there's less on my back. That's why I use it this way and not the other way. And people will tell you to do it different ways. That's how I prefer to do it, but do it, again, whatever way you want. Now, rather than a toothpick, I use a little silicone tool, but you could use a toothpick to spread it around. I use a couple different kinds of resin. My most common kind that I use is either this QIAO hard resin. These are on Amazon, and I have 2 different sizes. I have a little bottle and a bigger bottle on there for you. And then this one here, which is a Decor ROM. Now, hang on, I just got some on my finger. These 2, honestly, I think are the same exact resin, just in 2 different sales bottles. But I feel like they're the same exact resin. So they perform the same. Now, they are hard resin, and they are a 2 to 4 minute curing resin. If I use a 2 to 4 minute curing resin, I cure for 30 minutes in my Tiny Pandora Light. I use a Tiny Pandora Light. 1, she made it for us polymer clayers, and 2, there's a stay on button, so I don't have to keep hitting a 30-second or a 60-second button. There's a stay on button, and I leave it on. So for a 2 to 4 minute resin, I do 30 minutes, and if I have a resin like the RJ Crafts one. This one, because it's a slow curing resin, you really don't get any of that warping of your pendant. But this 30-minute one I do for 60 minutes to make sure it's fully cured so I don't get that sticky outer layer. Also, on the quick curing resins, you might get them warping a hair. Let me see if I can find one that did it. Like this one here. You see how it's tilted up a little bit? Some people will take double-sided tape or sticky tape and tape it to like a tile and then tape this. But again, if you get a spill, it's taped to a flat surface because obviously you can't tape to this. I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me. People don't notice it when I'm wearing it. I don't even notice it when I'm wearing it. It's just a hair tilted up just a little bit. So again, something to help that is you could do the back side and that would help, again, pull it backwards. You can also do the sides too. Just pour out a little resin and scoop it up and then just brush it on your sides. I don't tend to. I just tend to do the side that I'm going to be wearing. Sometimes resins get you this weird layer that when you touch them, they smear a little bit. That's the inhibition layer. It's an uncured layer of resin that happens during a chemical reaction process when it's curing. We have that in filling materials at work and sealant materials and stuff like that. Oh, my washer's going to get loud. I'm washing blankets. Sorry. So that happens. You don't want to use 99% alcohol to wipe that inhibition layer off or that smear layer. Just use a regular 70% because it will take your sheen off. But that's just like an oily outer layer. It shouldn't be like indenting, getting finger indents or nail indents. If that happens, you're not curing it long enough. You need to go longer. Again, thinner coats are better. Do multiple thinner coats than one super, super thick coat, I find. So anyways, I have a video on all of that, and I'm just wiping these off with my shirt. So anyways, let's see what bottles. Oh, they're about even. So all I do, and also I use a torch to get rid of the bubbles. Guys, you don't need to be afraid of torches. Obviously, don't put it on high. So you just, this one I got on Amazon. It's a kitchen one. But you can use a lighter too, or a candle lighter. Literally, you only need a tiny little flame. Yes, you don't want to be... Who the hell? Come on, guys, use your brain. You don't need to hit it with a flame, a torch. That will burn your crap. You just need the tiniest little, like, lighter flame. I hate when people say, I caught something on fire. I'm like, well, what the hell are you doing? Like, using your man's torch? You know, like, you don't need a blowtorch for this. Just a little tiny lighter will pop your bubbles. And you're only tapping the resin with your flame. You're not holding it on for a extended period of time. You're like quickly tapping it, and that's it. So I pour in the middle, and then I'm going to drag out to the edges. Now, some resins really pull away from the edges, and it's been probably 2 months since I've resined anything, so I could mess up. But some resins really pull away from the edge because that's how they dome. If you want a super high doming resin, it's got to pull away from the edge and pull the resin to the middle so you get that high dome. So you might have to do more layers. The other thing you're going to find in the summer or when it's warm, it's going to be more runny. Some resins are way more runny than others. Personally, myself, the Lisa Pavelka resin is one of the thicker ones I've used. It's more like the consistency of honey in the winter time for me because that's when I used it. Once I get through these, I'll probably use it a little bit more. That one does pull away more from the edges, so there are tricks to fixing that, but there are videos out there on Lisa Pavelka's resin. Just look up Lisa Pavelka resin. This is a good consistency, this QIAO, or the Deco ROM. It's like a medium consistency. One of the thinner ones I used is the RJ Crafts, but that's also the slowest one I have. So I just spread it around, and then I kind of tilt it just fairly slightly so I can see that I have everything covered. And once I do, I'll tap it with my torch. And I'm in the basement, so I don't have to worry about sunlight. Jackson! Sunlight hitting this at all. And it curing. So again, I got a flame. Hang on. I got a little flame, and all I'm going to do is tap it. So quickly, done. I'm not holding it there for a while. I'm just... And your flame will also make it thin it out. It'll heat it up and thin it out. So you don't want to be tilting this a whole bunch. And then take a peek at it. I just kind of shift it around so I can see in the light if anything is, if there's a big bubble anywhere. That looks pretty good. And if I want a thicker layer, then I'll add a little bit more after, or if I feel like I need a little bit more. I don't care if I have a high dome. I just want it more for sealing. And the big thing I find if I don't use resin is if I spray perfume on polymer clay that's been buffed up really well, it actually, when the alcohol sits on it from the perfume, it actually leaves like spots of where the perfume misted it, the polymer clay. Because I made a beautiful cabochon once, buffed it up. I mean, I went from 400 grit to 10,000 grit, and then buffed it with my Dremel, and then I used the Renaissance wax. And at work, I misted myself with a little perfume, and like 20 minutes later, I noticed I had all these little dots all over from where the perfume had hit it. And I think the alcohol and the perfume ate away, one at the varnish, at the wax, and then at the polymer clay sheen, it kind of roughed it up again. So that's why I prefer resin. I have not perfected resining a domed surface yet, so that is something I should work on, because I do like cabochons, but if I can't get resin on something, I'm not going to wear it, because I find I use perfume a lot. I like to mist myself with perfume, and I don't like the way that... I should just do it to a junk piece, because we all have junk pieces. I should do it to a junk piece and show you what it does, which is why I don't like the Renaissance wax, especially if I was selling a piece, because I would not want that to happen to someone I sold something to. Have them have little spots all over it, because they don't have a Dremel and they don't have things to rebuff it up. I mean, that's all I did to it, but afterwards, but it really sucked at the moment, you know. So then I'm going to put these in my tiny Pandora light, and I'm going to put it on for 30 minutes. So gently. This is the most time I get spills, because I have to walk over to my light, is walking and putting it in. If I have a thick layer, I find out that's when I get spills. But it doesn't happen much anymore, only in the beginning when I was starting. And we all have junk pieces that you can practice on. If you're just starting with resin, don't do it on the most beautiful piece you've ever made. Do it on pieces that you're like, ah, this is crap, I could throw this away. Don't resin the most beautiful piece ever first. Okay? Practice, or just bake a little square of brown scrap clay and practice resining that first until you get the hang of the consistency, spillage, how far to pull it to the edge, you know, how much you need, that kind of stuff, until you get the feel of it. So I'm going to let that sit in the light, and when it's done, I will be back, and we'll drill a hole and put some stuff on them, some bales and stuff. So they're both resined, and I just did that one layer. This one had a raised bubble. I could do another layer to cover it, but I'm not going to. I think I'm just going to drill a hole near it, because you really only see it on when it hits the lights a certain way. But if you wanted, if you were going to sell this or something, I'd put another thin layer over the entire thing to bring it to that level. This is another one that we did a while back that I just had to do another coat on. So I finished that one too. So anyways, and I plan on doing more with this pave at some point, but that's a different tutorial I did with this one and this one. Oh, this one here. So these here. So I have videos on those. Did I get scratches on it? Yep. Anyways. So with this one, now the thicker they are, the bigger the jump ring you're gonna need. And I have a couple different sizes. I have 6mm, 7mm, 8mm, and 10mm jump rings. I try to go with the smallest as possible. I prefer a jump ring over a pinch bale. They just always look way too big to me, but that's your choice. Now I have just this little pin drill. I don't like to use my Dremel. You can use your Dremel to drill, but it's going, so I find the one time I did it, I was like right off the side. I prefer to do it by hand. This is like a little $8 thing. I start with my smallest drill bit as I can. Some people go right to their normal size. I find if I do that, I may get cracking or breaking of the pendant or cracking of my resin, so I start with my smallest size. With this pin drill, you just twist this to close the chuck right there. It also has a spinny base, so that way you can put it in your hand without twisting your hand. You just twist the thing. So again, I already did those two, but starting with the smallest size, just put it in the middle there and tighten it up. And then find, where's that bump? I'm going to do it on the bump side on the top. So find your center, and the best way I find my center is by putting a little nick. Actually, it's one side thinner than the other. I might actually do this as a top because it's slightly thinner. This is a really thick pendant compared to what I normally do. I tend not to make them this thick, but you really don't get any warping when they're this thick compared to when you make a piece this thick. You'll get a little warping from the resin. That's a big difference, and I've made them thinner too. That one's a little thinner there, and I got a little warping. This time it, you know, you can kind of see it in the middle there, but thickness is up to you and you'll learn with experience. So what I tend to do, you could take a permanent marker if you're not sure where to mark it, and kind of put a dot and see if you like that spot. I'm going to just make a tick mark with my tip and kind of make like a little mark in it, and then I can take a, I can see it, I don't know if you can, let me see. Can you see it right above my fingernail there? That little mark? Then you can look at it. If you're not good at it, or if you're doing something like this with a straight line and it's you want to try to find the center, just take a permanent marker, put a little dot on it, and then wipe it off with alcohol. So again, I tend to do it when it's down on the table, but it makes it really hard for you to see, so I'm going to start it that way and then I'll pick it up. So put it in your tick mark, and then just, again, I don't have to twist my hand, all I have to do is twist my fingers. Let me get it started and I'll pick it up. Now the thicker your resin, the harder it will be to go through, but don't be afraid of drilling because it's actually quite easy to drill. I mean, that took like 2 seconds. And normally what I did with like these two is I did them both on the smallest. I do have to do another one as well, so I think I'll do them together. It only takes, you know, a minute to do them. So go through the front. You want to go through the resin side first, and that way you don't separate your resin from your clay. If you're pushing up this way from the back, you might crack your clay coming through. Once you go through the front, then go through the back just to clean it up. Let me do this one while I'm at it, because this has been sitting here for a couple of months and I haven't worn it. Now watch your finger. If you're putting your finger right behind, especially on these smaller ones, when that sucker goes through, it is sharp. And this drill bit is bent. I don't know if you can see that, but my bit is bent. But it goes through faster if you have it down on the table. You can put more pressure. So go through the front, and then go through the back. And then unscrew it, go your next size up. Tighten it through the front, through the back, sorry, everybody's coming down, and again through the front and then through the back. So again, the thicker it is, the bigger you're going to need of a jump ring. And I've tried to explain this before. It's hard to make sense, but they're circles, so they need to go through without catching. So as your jump ring goes through here, if the diameter is not big enough, it will catch. So it just depends on your piece. So I would definitely have multiple size jump rings. The smallest I have is a 6. Actually, I do have 4, but I I've never used a 4 on a polymer clay piece. I use them when I make like chainmail, which I actually have one sitting here. I wore it today, an anklet, something like this. These little ones with my dangles are the chainmail. Oh, my alarm just went off. My muffins are out of the oven, or ready to be taken out of the oven. So let me do this last one. So that's probably big enough for this one because it's not as thick, so I can use a smaller jump ring, but this one I probably need a slightly bigger hole. And again, depending on the gauge, which is how thick your wire is, will depend how big of a hole you need. So all this kind of stuff will just depend on the things you're using. But I'm going to make a slightly bigger hole in this one because this one's super thick. Okay, so our holes are now drilled. Let me get this picked up and go take my muffins out of the oven. I'll be right back. Okay, they need a few more minutes. So anyways, next thing you're going to need are some kind of pliers. I tend to use some bent nose pliers. And if I could find my other set, I only have one in front of me for some reason. Where's my other set? Usually I use 2, but I don't know where my other set is. And this one has a little hot glue on it because I've been doing so much with hot glue. I've just been hanging my hot glue gun over this. So anyways, you're going to need some pliers. I usually use 1 in each hand, but I don't know where it is at the moment. But next thing, jump rings. So I think for one of these we can use a 6mm for this little guy. And then because, like I was saying, diameter wise, or the circumference of the circle, as when it's open, as you're going through one of these edges, so the way you open it is you open it front to back like this, okay? Never pull it apart. Also, I just held it incorrectly. Ideally, when you're opening it, you want to have more of your plier touching your piece. That way it helps with warpage. So you want to hold it with as much of your plier touching as you can and twist front to back. And what I mean is when you go through, as you're coming through the hole, if your diameter isn't thick enough, you're going to catch your clay coming up. So something like this thick, you see this won't work. See how small it is? It won't even, it's not that little loop part at the bottom is not big enough to go through here. So this one it should be. Let's see. This is my thickest gauge wire, is my 6mm. They have the chunkiest wire. So let's see if I even drilled my hole big enough to fit this one through. So that one's through. And then let's try a 7mm on this thicker one. See what I mean? The gauge. You see how this 7mm thinner wire than my 6mm? I wish they all were thicker wire because it's sturdier. Let's see. So this is a 7mm, and you see what I mean? As I'm coming through, I'm kind of catching a little bit. Now, a lot of times you can force it through, but you may rip your clay a little bit on the back side. And I actually just distorted this whole thing. But I think an 8mm is going to look too big. But do you see how it elongated my hole there? Right there up at the top. To make it fit its way through. So now I should be able to fit another one. I don't really want to go up to an 8 if I can help it. Come on, baby. No, I can't. I gotta use this 8. What is going on here tonight? What is catching so it won't go through? Hang on, something's in there. Like a piece of scrap from when I Oh, here we go. I don't have my drill bit out yet. There we go. Something was in there. Holy crap, I just like warped 3 of those. Well, it happens to everybody, right? Let's try this one more time. See if I can get it through this time without warping my... Come on. There we go. Okay. This one will probably take a 7 because this one's a little thicker than that first one. Actually, I might not do that one because I might not wear that one. This one's thick too. The piece isn't thick, but the resin is thick. Oh, my muffin's got to come out. Josh, I hear it. I just said that my muffin's got to come out. Okay, I gotta take my muffins out. Okay, sorry, had to take my muffins out. Making breakfast for the week. And so we got them all through. Now we just got to pick a bale. And that's up to you on what you want to do. I tend to go with silver because I wear mainly silver. I don't really wear gold. And I don't know, for some reason I tend to prefer smaller bales, like littler ones. And with these ovaler ones, I tend to actually like these round ones that I got off of Amazon, these little round ones. I think they're on my ambassador store rather than a teardropped one. So I have these really little teardrops, or I have like bigger style ones, which I don't use that much because they're huge. So I tend to like those little round ones instead of these big ones. For some reason, I don't know, I like them like that. So I'll probably wear that one with that. Actually, we'll probably do that with that because I kind of like the contrast of it. And maybe I don't want to use a flower. Maybe not with that. Good enough. And so all you got to do is just slide it on. And again, this is easier when you have 2 pliers. And if I could find my other plier, I would use it, but I got to find it. Just trying to twist it up a little bit so it's a little more even. But you can do it with your fingers on one, and then again, just twist front to back to close. Sometimes you can hear it click, sometimes you can't. They're not all made perfectly when they're manufacturing these. So you see how one's sitting up higher? Sometimes you do have to pinch them. And sometimes we distort them when we're putting them through. So, but you do want to make sure it's closed. I mean, you could twist your seam so it's like inside of the pendant, but at some point it's going to come out. So I don't really worry about that. And we got one. Again, slide it on. Twist front to back. This one's a little bit distorted from when I pushed it through this thick thing. There we go. And what's nice is I'm wearing these, so I don't have to worry about them. If it comes off, I could always make another one. I haven't had one come off yet, luckily. And I haven't had anybody, I've given them 2, had one come off yet. But if, God forbid, it came loose, you could solder them a little bit if you're selling them, just to make sure they're nice and secure. But you don't need to. I don't know what I would do. I would probably, if I was selling things, probably get a thicker gauge. I'd prefer to get a thicker gauge. I might have to do, this is a 7mm, and you see how it's not really wanting to touch because it's, that circle isn't, actually I think that was, yeah, I think that was a 7. Let me try an 8 in that one, just because it's not touching, and that's what I mean by the circle trying to go through. You'll know if you need a bigger gauge. Because see how it's not wanting to close? Even if I close it, it's springing back. It's because it's pushing it too much. The pendant doesn't look that thick itself, but look how thick that resin is. I had to do a pretty thick layer of resin to cover those pave stones. No, is this an 8 too? Let me see, I know I distorted it, but I almost think that was an 8, wasn't it? Not that I should be on video doing this with you, because we didn't do this. Oh, I might need a 10. What a pain. Oh, I hate my 10 millimeters. They're so big. I rarely have to use them. Rarely, but that piece is just, this thing is so thick. Look how big this is. I might actually have to drill my hole thicker. So these have big gauged wires, which I wish kind of all of them, even if they were little, were bigger gauge wires. Kind of might look goofy, won't it? How big it is. I should get 9 millimeters. I don't know if they make them. Well, I have a 7. That ring looks goofy now with that, doesn't it? This might be one that a pinch bail may work, but I really hate them. Let me see if I can find my pinch bails, and I'll show you guys. Are they right here? Yeah, they're right here. I hate these. So this is a brand of pinch bail I have, right? And to me, this part looks so damn big. I tend not to use a bail this big. This is a big bail. I could actually separate these and use these bails, but they're huge. And I don't really use that size. So these are pinch bails. And again, I actually don't even know if that pinch will fit all the way through here. So pinch bails, some people really like. Some people would set. You can set. There are different ones where you can actually set it in the clay. I have some of those, but I used those in the beginning, but I don't really like those anymore. I can show you those. This type here, which again, I don't really use anymore. I have like 2 different styles, but enough to show you. Here's one of the styles. So this flat part here, you could embed into the clay, and then this part would be sticking out. I used to use those. And for this one, actually, that probably because I had a backing. Because I had a backing, I could have sandwiched that between the front and the back and then kind of set that in there. So you can use that type of bail. I have 2 different styles of these. Let's see with these pinch bail if this will work. Again, I'm not a big fan of these. Look how wide I'm going to need to get this to go over here. That's going to be the weird part about this. Is I don't know if it's going to stress this guy too much. So I'm going to have to open this really, really far. And then literally you just pinch it. I don't like them. I think they look goofy. Some people really like them. I am not a big fan of them at all. I don't know. I can't decide if that's what I'm going to leave on there. And then it doesn't really feel sturdy to me. I feel like it could come out. I don't know. Maybe I'll try wearing it and see if I can get used to it or not. And maybe I'll try to find 9mm jump rings. So anyways, the one we were making is done. Kind of got off on a little roll, but so definitely with bails and jump rings, you know, you kind of have to find what you like and what you prefer, and each person's going to like something else. Some people use screw eyelets where they screw it in and bake it and then take it out and glue it. You could use something like that. There's many different ways to get it on. I mean, there's really many different ways to get your piece strung, but like here's that other style that you would sandwich between 2 layers of clay. You wouldn't want to jam it down in there because it just it would distort everything, but you can sandwich that between 2 layers of clay, and then you have one like that. And if I ever do one this thick again, I definitely will. It's just my resin, each layer, I had to do 2 layers to get them over the paved stones because they were sitting up. And then my last layer I messed up on, so I had to do another layer, so my resin got really thick. Anyways, yeah, just play around and see what you like and search. You know, I don't have links to everything, and I'm sorry, I just don't, and I don't have the time to go through. Like, someone asked me today for one of my metal cutters, and I'm like, I bought that over 2 years ago, and I'm not going to go through my order history either, and I don't even know where I bought it from, but I'm not going to go through my order history for the last 2 years just to find a link. So definitely, a lot of my bales I get from this place, Litha Studios on Etsy. A lot of these bales, the little round ones like this, I got on Amazon, which are in my Amazon Ambassador page. The link is below this video in the description, and on my Facebook page in the announcements tab. So a lot of these I got from like the Litha Studios. These ones, these ones, these ones. And then I have other colors, like she has gunmetal, which I really like. Here's gunmetal, black, some rose gold, and some of these are brass or bronze. So I think that's bronze, and I think this kind's brass. But anyways, I get that from her, that Litha Studios on Etsy. But and I found her by searching, just searching bales, jewelry bales, jump rings, you know, pinch bales. I think those other ones that I was talking about embedded, I think those are glue-on bales, actually. I think they're meant to be glued on, like to earrings and stuff. But just search bale, and I'm sure it'll pop up at some point. So, I don't know, a little overview on different types of bales there.